So I got one of these Rode Video Micros and wanted to test it out, compare it against the onboard mic of the Canon 80D, which is what I'm using to do these tests, and also compare it with the Zoom H1 that I have right here with a setup to go on top of the camera. So first up was the Rode Video Micro, and right off the bat I noticed that it had a bounce to it. So I was worried that the little bristles might touch the top of the camera and affect the quality of the sound, but listening to it after the recording, it didn't really show up at all. It wasn't a problem. Okay, this is the Rode Video Micro. Testing it with the windscreen to see how it picks up my voice. We're going to compare it to the onboard mic and also the Zoom H1N to see how it compares. Here we're testing the audio of the Zoom H1 mounted on top of the camera. Now the one thing about this is it's not in a shock mount, so I'm curious to see with just me holding the camera, if it's going to make a difference not being in a shock mount. Alright, so this is just the onboard microphone for the Canon 80D. So we're going to compare that and see how it sounds. And we're recording in manual mode for the audio, so it shouldn't be up and down trying to get the right level based on the conditions when I stop and start talking and things like that. One important part of this review was keeping everything in manual. That gave me another level of control to keep the microphones each on a more level playing field. So a quick overview of the environment. The wind is about 5 to 10 miles an hour. We're fairly close to a road, regular traffic. So testing the Zoom H1 mounted into the hot shoe mount without a shock mount, I could notice a little bit more of the vibrations that came from holding the grip of the camera, because it's basically in the exact same position, also with a windscreen. But overall, that was still minimal. So I would say the Zoom H1 is still usable. It's just not the first choice I would go with. I want to see if that makes any difference holding it in the hand. I'm not thinking it will. There's no shock mount. So I'm going to switch hands here, see if we can tell any difference. So I'm going to switch hands here, see if we can tell any difference. The Zoom H1 is a good mic. I just don't think I would choose it over the Rode Video Micro and its shock mount for the way that it worked on top of the camera. It's not as good of a setup. Though there are shock mount options for the Zoom H1 that people have come up with or that you can find online, they just looked a little janky to me, so I didn't really want to mess with it. I was actually really impressed with how well the onboard mic did with the Canon 80D. I hadn't really tested it or compared it against anything else until today, and it did really well. The audio sounded clean and crisp. I will note that the onboard mic is more omnidirectional by design, so it tends to pick up more background and environment noise, but it does do a great job for what it is. And I think the key also was to use manual mode for the audio. So even if you don't have any kind of an external mic, the onboard mic is good with the 80D. The only problem is you will notice wind. So it should be a pretty close comparison, as they are both recording at the same level. And obviously there is no windscreen for the onboard mic, so we're just picking up whatever that mic is going to pick up. The conditions I was in, the wind was less than 10 miles an hour. It was enough that you would notice it. And just to test to see how the Video Micro and the Zoom H1 did without the windscreen, I took those off and noticed a huge difference. Okay, so again, this is the Video Micro, but without the windscreen now. Same environment. Right here is the Zoom H1 without the windscreen. So we'll see how it does in this environment where there's relatively little wind. We'll see without a windscreen what kind of a difference that makes in the quality of the audio. The Video Micro and the Zoom H1 did terrible in the wind. Even though it was a slim, slight wind, it was still very noticeable. If I was to compare all three mics without the windscreen, hands down the onboard mic was the best. But overall, between using the onboard mic, the Zoom H1, or the Video Micro, I would have to go with the Video Micro because of the shock mount and because of the windscreen. just the way that it all in all works in an outdoor environment. It's set up ready to go and eliminates the problems that typically are going to come as a result of filming outdoors. Also, I do like the sound of the Rode Video Micro the best of all these three mics, at least in the environment that I was testing in. It seems to have the most body, the fullest sound, and the most crisp sound compared against the onboard mic and the Zoom H1. So for this test, even though all three options are good, the Rode Video Micro takes it.
It's the one and only Eagle Double G. Snoop Dogg. You know I'm mobbing with the D.R.E.